you are going to see competition all over your television screen between Progressive automobile insurance, arguing with Geico automobile insurance, arguing with State Farm automobile insurance. There is no reason in the world why we're not allowed to buy health insurance across state lines other than to increase our dependencies. That is, I might say, so obvious that even a caveman can understand it. Dependency explains the implacable hostility of the current administration to health savings accounts, wherein you buy high-deductible health insurance, you become eligible for tax-preferred savings, out of which you pay your regular expenses. The trouble is that emancipates people because they take their own money and buy what they want. It has been well said, no one washes a rental car. You take care of what you own. And a health savings account is a way of doing that. It is part of the dependency agenda to stigmatize and delegitimize large portions of the private sector, such as the pharmaceutical industry for its supposedly obscene profits. If you confiscated all the profits of the American pharmaceutical industry, you would lower the pharmaceutical component of our health care bill from 10% all the way down to 8%. And in the process, you would, of course, kill the industry's capacity for innovation, which it funds out of profits. Insurance companies are now in for their turn on the cross. If you confiscated all the profits of the health insurance industry in our country, you could pay with those profits 2 days of American health care. Part of the dependency agenda is to encourage an entitlement mentality. To encourage, for example, the entitlement mentality off which the trial bar, the largest single contributor to the Democratic Party, prospers. It is the entitlement that we are told we have, that if anything bad happens to us, even if it's a result of our own imbecilic behavior, we are entitled to sue someone to be made whole. That is why America, as a sign of our displaced sense of personal responsibility, America has all these weird labels on things that we buy. You know, if you go to McDonald's and buy a cup of hot coffee, it comes in a styrofoam cup with hot stamped on it in Farsi, Mandarin Chinese, French, German. It's because that woman bought a cup of hot coffee, clamped it between her legs, drove down the street, spilled it, burned herself, sued McDonald's, and collected. That is why in the land of the free and the home of the brave, you can buy a 5-inch fishing lure that comes with a warning label that says harmful if swallowed. You can buy a letter opener that says safety goggles recommended. You can buy a clothes iron that says do not iron clothes on body. You can buy a child stroller that says remove child before folding. I tend to subscribe to the Garth Brooks theory of personal responsibility expressed in his song, Long Neck Bottle, Let Go of My Hand. You can see the dependency agenda in the TARP program, enacted to buy the toxic assets on the books of banks, not one of which has been bought, while 2 car companies have been bought. You can see the dependency agenda in the disproportionate share of the stimulus funds that have gone to state and local governments to maintain the employment of unionized public employees whose wages already are 34% higher and whose benefits are already 70% higher than those of people in the private sector. You can see the dependency agenda in the very preference for targeted tax cuts. That is, tax cuts that depend upon you doing what the government wants you to do, to buy a hybrid car, to build a wind farm, whatever, so long as you use your money the way they want you to do it. This is tax policy itself is going to become increasingly a way of increasing the dependency on the central government, to make people dependent on a government they are not paying for. You've all seen, I hope, the graph with 2 intersecting lines that should terrify everyone in this room. One line shows the declining participation in the income tax system. The top 1% of American earners pay 40% of the income taxes. Top 5% pay 60% of the income taxes. The bottom 50% of American earners pay 3% of the income taxes. When this administration gets in place all of its tax preferences, 60% of the American people, a large majority, will pay either no income taxes or less than 5% of their income. Now that is a majority that has zero incentive any longer to restrain the growth of a government they are not paying for. That is a classic case of moral hazard, and it is an addiction and a dependency on the government. They are encouraging now an increasing dependency on government to determine the distribution of income in the United States. How else do you explain why they are so desperate to continue death as a taxable event in this society? In 1980, the Philadelphia Phillies won the pennant and the World Series. And in the clubhouse celebration afterwards, their madcap relief pitcher, Tug McGraw, was asked by a journalist, "What are you going to do with your World Series winnings?" And Tug said, "I'm going to spend 80% on wine and women, and I'll probably waste the rest." Well, it got you to thinking. If you work hard in America and save your money and reach age 65 and say, "The hell with it, I'm going to Las Vegas and blow my money away," that's fine. It's a free country. But if you save it and try and give it to your children, the government will come in and take a bite out of it. What's wrong with that picture? Another way that dependency is encouraged is by the encouragement of envy as a driver of social policy. Now, we have been remarkably free of that in our country. That's why we're the only industrial nation that has never had a large, successful redistributionist socialist party. But envy is gaining in our country, which is a little bit odd because envy is not fun. Do you ever think that envy is the only one of the 7 deadly sins that doesn't give the sinner even momentary pleasure? I know what you're doing. You're going down the list. It is essential to a dependency agenda that you expand the share of the gross domestic product taken by government. A 4 percentage point increase has been accomplished by the Obama administration in the first year. And more is coming in the name of a value-added tax. That's a French word for huge government. Larry Summers, the principal economic advisor to the president, says conservatives don't like a value-added tax because they know it is a money machine, and liberals don't like it because they think it's regressive. We will get a value-added tax when conservatives realize that it's regressive and liberals realize it's a money machine. In any case, we're going to have to be alert. The way to resist the dependency agenda in taxation is to subscribe to what Larry Lindsay, a good conservative economist, calls the Monday-Tuesday rule. Most Americans should come home from work on Monday evening and say, "That's it, I'm done working for the government this week." Perhaps a few Americans should work into the middle of Tuesday. That's it. The Monday-Tuesday rule people can understand. They can also understand the increasing drive to make more and more sectors more and more dependent on the government. Can someone explain to me why, at a time of record farm earnings, we still have a farm program? A century ago, about 40% of the American workforce was in agriculture. By 1940, it was 17%. By 1970, it was 4%. Today, it's under 2%. We're still feeding ourselves rather too well and exporting a third of what we grow. When Abraham Lincoln made his one catastrophic blunder, I don't mean appointing General McClellan, I mean creating the Agriculture Department. There was one Agriculture Department bureaucrat for every 227,000 farms. Today there's one for every 19 farms. The story is told, and I hope it's true, that an Ag Department bureaucrat was seen weeping in the halls of the building on Independence Avenue, and a fellow bureaucrat came up and said, "What's wrong?" And the weeping bureaucrat said, "My farmer died." We have seen, speaking of a dependency agenda, more and more local undertakings becoming dependent on the federal government. And again, conservative administrations are culpable in this. It was under the last Republican president that we passed a bill that further intruded the government into running our schools, oblivious of the fact that the American family is the smallest school, that the American family is the primary transmitter of values, and that schools serve families, not the other way around. The general problem